good evening, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today for this session. And today's session is going to be taken by Subramanian Ramanathan. So I think I checked, it's like your fifth session with us. So thank you for the active participation. I'll leave it up to you to introduce yourself and take it forward. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for taking the time to join. My name is Subramanian Ramanathan. You can call me Subbu. I lead the AI practice here at Altudo and been with Altudo for about 6 years, worked with entity data cognizant in the past, with a lot of domain experience in manufacturing, retail, professional services, and B2B. And I'm a four-time Sitecore technology MVP, and I write blogs and create modules. I've created the Teams app for Sitecore as well. If you get a chance, please do try those modules, which is available in the GitHub, and let me know your feedback. So today we'll be discussing about the new Sitecore Marketplace SDK, which was released I think about like 3-4 months ago, and like we will be specifically focusing on building agentic apps. So we'll discuss about the agentic pattern solution approaches and how you could combine the agentic approach with your marketplace SDK that was released by Sitecore, and how you could deliver an agentic marketplace app for your clients. So let's start with the background, like why this marketplace app is an important thing in this industry now. Because if you have like I hope many of you would have worked with the Sitecore XP implementations. When you work with Sitecore XP, you have the complete flexibility to change anything. Like even you can change the Sitecore appearance, like pipelines, the way Sitecore works completely, not just your website. So, but then when the XM Cloud was released, we lost that ability because it's a SaaS product and we cannot customize how it works and all of those things. Even still, like with the marketplace, you cannot customize certain things, but then you will be able to customize or the way of working which you need. You cannot customize like some of the ribbon bars and all of those, like how you could do with the XP, but then you could still like add new apps for your clients, like whatever they wanted to do, whatever they wanted to change, like within the page editor or whatever new apps they wanted to add in the homepage and all of those, like you will still be able to do it today. And there are two types of architectures here. One is the client side and the full stack. So today we'll be seeing about the client side, and the full stack was released very recently. The difference between these two is that so when you work with the client side app, you will be able to, if you have to interact with any of the APIs, you will be using the built-in authorization of the Sitecore itself. So this marketplace app will get rendered within an iframe. On the right side in my screen, you could see that that is an app which is rendered within the page editor, and this specific app is rendered within an iframe itself. So you deploy an app like within an iframe. So when you deploy within an iframe, you cannot control what happens outside, which is a front-end known problem. So what Sitecore has done is like they've created a built-in authorization. If you have to interact with any of the XM Cloud APIs, you don't have to write a lot of code. Like you can just use the hooks that they've created and do it. With browser as the proxy, the app within the iframe communicates with what is outside. That is the client-side app. And in case of full stack app, it is something like if you, for example, if you have like for certain long running processes, you want to kickstart the process from the app, and then or if you wanted to like run independently, and if for example, if you wanted like a lot of AI processes or like some other process like which has to be like long running, then you can probably go with this full stack option because that is an independent way, and there is a client side authorization, client credentials approach which is available within Sitecore, through which you can authenticate from the backend app to communicate with the XM Cloud APIs and make those changes. So in case of full stack, you will have a client-side component which is rendered on the front end, and a server-side component which is rendered in the backend. And the client side communicates with the server side, and the server side can run independently. That's the whole idea. And as I said, the authorization, there are two options where there is built-in authorization and a custom authorization as well, which is you can also introduce your own authorization. But when you go with built-in authorization, you don't have to write a lot of code. And the extension points, there are two major extension points. One is the standalone. If you want the app to kind of like take the whole screen and run independently, then you could go with that specific option. And you have an option to do it. And sometimes like you may have an app like which has to interact with the multiple other apps. I keep saying XM Cloud here, but because this presentation was created, but then like you have to like read it as Sitecore AI because Sitecore has rebranded that to Sitecore AI. And then you have multiple options within the within like if the content thing itself, like Sitecore AI itself, which is full screen context panel. The context panel is the one that you see on the right side of the screen, and custom field is something like which you can kind of if you wanted to. I think the one that you see on the right side is basically the custom field, where you click on a specific button for a specific field, and then you can choose. Like it can be an example, can be like a color picker or something like that. What we will see today is a context panel. And full screen is simple, like you just wanted the app to like render in a full screen. For example, if you wanted to build a content migration app, so then which is independent of like what has to happen within the page editor, right? So you could probably do it as a full screen app. And a dashboard widget is something which you wanted to render within the home page of the Sitecore portal itself. Yeah. So now moving on to the agentic AI side. So a lot of you must be familiar with this, but then I'll just do a quick recap. In 2022, we got this ChatGPT, like which can generate human-like text and images. But then there was one problem with the ChatGPT. It was using all its trained knowledge. When it was released in 2022, it was trained only till 2021 data or 2020 data, and then it can make its own decision on what to render and all of those things. So what happened is like when you wanted to scale this to your specific environment, and if you want ChatGPT to be applied on your specific environment, that was not possible in 2022. That's where this new architecture evolved, which is retrieval augmented generation, and otherwise called as RAG, and function calling. So with these two approaches, we were able to apply our data and our content along with ChatGPT, the GPT models, and we were able to generate the response and apply it for our environments. And that's where like GitHub Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, and the multiple Copilots came into picture. And 2024 and 2025, this agentic AI concept evolved, where you see like there are multiple agent frameworks, and there are multiple platforms also available, like Radial, Clean, multiple other platforms you have. And what the difference is that so previously we had only generative models, but in 2024 and 25, we had two other new variation of models that evolved, which is the reasoning model and the actioning model. The reasoning model is something, so if you give a complex problem, it was able to break the complex problem into smaller problems, and it was able to reason and respond with accurate answers. Because generative model were totally different. Like even though like all of these models are like looking similar to us, the way it works is a little different. The generative model is a prediction based model. It basically when you give a when you ask for a specific question, so what is Sitecore, so then it kind of predicts what is the next best word. Like it starts with the word Sitecore, and then it says like Sitecore is a DXP platform, so it finds out like what is the next best word, and then it completes the whole sentence. Like it kind of iteratively finds the next best word for that specific sentence and completes the sentence, and then creates the next sentence like that. So this is a generative model concept. But then the reasoning model is totally different, because it shouldn't be generating based on what it is trained. It has to just use the knowledge, the intelligence, and then come up with the solution for the problem. So that way it was a different kind of model. And the third series, which I mentioned, is the actioning models, where these, if you wanted to make any actions today, whatever you do it in the browser, you can automate that with AI through prompts. So you give specific prompts, and it opens up the browser, or there were computer use models, browser use models, which opens up the computer desktop and the browser, and it does all the actions that you wanted to perform. So these three series of models, with these three series, we are now able to automate any of the business process that you have. But then the value will be there only when you automate something which you do very repeatedly, because engineering these agentic systems is not easy. So you have to do prompt engineering, and then you have to do context engineering, and make sure it does deliver the accurate response, and then you have to deploy, you have to maintain. Like there are multiple complex problems. The model itself constitutes to only 10% of the problem that we're looking at, and 90% is more of an engineering, like how you deploy, how you maintain, how you ensure accuracy, how you ensure performance, how you supply the context. Like all of these constitutes about 90%. So that's why like if you wanted to automate like any process, you can, but then it will be like a huge effort. So you have to make sure to pick the right set of process to automate, like something that you would do 5 times a day, or 10 times a day, something like that, right? So only when you pick those kind of process, you'll be able to deliver the ROI that you would look for. So when I mentioned in the previous slide, I was saying about like whenever you take any business process, right? So you will have multiple stages there. So even if you take an example of responding an email, So once you get an email, like you basically look at that information, you perceive that, you analyze and you plan and you come up with the response, and you decide like either to respond this way or that way, and then you kind of like write an email, right? So like that, this is a simple task. But then if you take like any business process, the business process are constituted with multiple tasks, and for each of these tasks, you will be like doing some kind of analysis, some kind of planning, decision, and execution, right? So this is a pattern that happens across all of the business process. And for each of these, like now you have the generative models, reasoning and actioning, right? So if for to do an analysis and planning, you could use the reasoning models, and even for decision, you could use the reasoning models. And for execution, you can use the generative model and combined with the actioning models, right? So that is these three set of models that we see here are needed to complete the whole business process. Okay. So let's understand what is an AI agent. So an AI agent is very simple, right? Like so, it's kind of like a virtual element. It's not like very complex. It includes an LLM model and an instruction that you give to this specific LLM model of like what it has to respect, what it has to do, and all. And then you will have like, for example, like if you work in an application which is very much like client facing, like accepting real-time requests, like you have to give instructions that you shouldn't obey the instructions which somebody gives in the chat window, and it has to obey the instructions which you give. Otherwise, like you might suffer from the prompt engineering attacks and all. So these are the prompt injection attacks. So you have to make sure like you structure these instructions well in a way that you consider security, performance, accuracy, all of these things together. And then you have to supply this with a knowledge base, like what that is the context. Like it could be structured data or an unstructured data or something from the internet as well. And then an actioning layer. So it can, what actions it has to make, like it has to send an email or it has to update some specific record, has to send a Teams message or any of these, right? So if you combine all of these four, this is basically an AI agent. And when you work with agents frameworks, like you will have a specific wrapper, like which you will be using, and you will be supplying all four information which I mentioned here to create an agent when you work with an agent framework. And when you work with the platform, you will be using the visual builder supplied by the platform, and that specific platform will also consider these four things that you see on the screen. And moving on to single agent patterns. So there are multiple patterns, architectural patterns, like when you wanted to build a single agent system and a multi-agent system. And most of the times you will get value only when you build multi-agent system. So we'll look at this specific pattern and then we'll go on to the multi-agent. So when you go look into the single agent pattern, the first one is the basic responder pattern, which is very simple, like getting the response and responding based on the trained memory. And the next one is the retrieval augmented generation, where you supply your specific context and then make sure the GPT only looks at your context and respond back. The third one is the memory augmented pattern, where the agent uses an external memory system. It could be like a vector database or something to remember the past contract interactions, like with a specific user, to allow for like more personalized response. And then the next one is the tool use pattern, which is also called as function calling, like where you wanted to call your external APIs to kind of pass on the action layer to an external system or something like that. And then the next one is the planning pattern, where you want to use a reasoning model to plan a specific task. Like if you give a complex goal, it has to break them down into multiple smaller goals and give you a response. And the next one is a reflection pattern, where if you want to, the agent itself evaluates its specific own output. Like you give the prompt in such a way that the agent reviews it and then presents the response. Like nowadays, like we have a lot of models which are agentic models, which means like, for example, if you take a 5.1 codex, so that is not a single LLM model itself. It's an agentic model, meaning like there are multiple models behind the scenes, and it does its own evaluation as well before it responds back to you. That's why the accuracy is a little better with these newer models. And then the last one is the react pattern, like where this specific, like you are combining the reasoning and the actioning together and then making it do some specific decisions or actions there. And then the next one is the multi-agent pattern, where you combine multiple agents, and each of the single agent can follow its pattern, like which is mentioned in the previous screen. And you combine these multiple single agents and build together a system. This is beneficial, like when you wanted to automate a specific business process, because what we have seen over time is like if you are specifically trying to automate a specific a business process, and if you give all of the actions to a single LLM model, that's where the hallucination is very high. So you need to look at the complete business process, look at the complex goal, and you have to break that by yourself into smaller goals, and then assign individual agent for each of these goals, and that's when you will see success. So the first pattern that we see here is the supervisor pattern, where you will have an orchestrator and the multiple workers, right? Like the orchestrator will coordinate all of the interactions which has to happen with the external world, and then it receives the input and it passes on to the individual workers, get all everything done, and summarizes back to the front end. This is a pattern that we'll be seeing in today's demo. And the next one is the hierarchical pattern, where you have like an hierarchical architecture, like one supervisor, which will be like looking at multiple different supervisors. Like when you wanted to do like a complex process with multiple parallel streams running, so this is the pattern that you could follow, where one supervisor will have multiple individual supervisors reporting to it, and individual supervisors can have multiple workers, like and getting that focus on getting the task to be done. The next one is a comparative pattern, and this is something which is which would be recommended like when you wanted to like work on like critical insights, when you wanted to retrieve some critical insights. If you want like two set of agents separately work together, work separately, find out what is the response for the user's question, and then they kind of like compare like which one is best, and we respond back to the user, or we come consolidate and validate and all. So this is a comparative pattern. This is helpful like when you wanted to bring an insight which is hidden within the data, and if that decision and if you want to use that insight to make a critical decision, so we want to make sure like we are not going into the hallucinations and we get the right response for the user. And the next one is the network pattern, where you have like a horizontal set of like one agent completes a specific task and it passes on to the next agent and it goes on to the next agent. So this is also a common pattern which you may be working on. And the handoff pattern is something like this is where the A2A protocol comes in. So when you work with multiple systems, for example, like you have Sitecore, which has its own agentic flows and agentic systems, and you have like other products, like for example, HubSpot, it has its own agentic system. And if you wanted to certain process to be done within the Sitecore platform itself, based on the data which resides within Sitecore, so you'll be building a set of agents within the Sitecore platform, and those agents will complete the task. And if you have like a specific set of tasks which has to be done within the HubSpot, if it's efficient to be doing it in that way, so then you will build those agents there, and this agent from Sitecore would hand it off to the agent within the HubSpot. And the last one is the agentic RAG. And this is a common pattern which again you will be using it like with insight generations and so on. So the retrieval augmented generation, that is a problem with this retrieval augmented generation pattern. Meaning like so how it works is like when you work with AI search or something like we support semantic search. So what happens is when a user asks a specific question or searches for something in the front end, and you have to like the retrieval augmented pattern, what it does is like it might pick the top 10 matching documents based on the user's keyword or the phrase they present. So we'll be fetching the top 10 documents, and then we pass it on to AI, and the AI basically summarizes that, looking at the user's question and looking at the top 10 matching documents. It synthesizes and comes up with a response for the user's question directly, like an AI summary, which you see similar to in Google. Like when you search for something, you see the AI summary, right? If you wanted to do something within your website as well, if you wanted to present an AI summary, you might be looking at RAG pattern, but then this RAG pattern has a disadvantage because it will be looking at only the top 10 documents and not the top 20 or 30, right? Like because that is a context window limit. So this is where this agentic RAG comes into picture, where you will have multiple agents, and the first agent would determine and looks at the user's question, find out what is the user's intent, and then it can make even multiple RAG calls, and then it can synthesize all of those together and make sure we get the right response back to the user. So when you wanted to ensure the accuracy, you can go with agentic RAG. The problem with RAG is like it can only pick the top 10 documents, and the response that it generates is only as accurate as like what data it gets. So now moving on to how to build these agentic apps, like you have three major ways. The first one is the AI platform. So which is like if you could probably think of Gradial or Glean or Writer, like where these are the agentic platforms, and there are multiple other agentic platforms as well. You could go and create these agents in there and invoke them from your marketplace app. based on whatever actions you wanted to perform. So this is the first way. And the second one is the Sitecore Agentic Studio. So today you can, if you have builder license, you will be able to create agents within the platform. And the Sitecore flows is something, there are like 3 out of the blocks flows which Sitecore has created. But then if you wanted to create more flows, Sitecore will be releasing that option of creating more flows. I think in February is what the planned release date is. So once they release, you will be able to create custom flows. Custom flows is similar to multi-agent systems, right? So today you can create single agent system. And if you wanted to create a multi-agent system, then you have to wait till it is released. And once it is released, you might be able to connect that with the marketplace app and do those actions there. And the third one is the build your own, right? Like you have like a Microsoft Agent Framework, and Semantic Runner was the older version of Microsoft Agent Framework. So that is another option. LangChain, all of these. Using all of these, you could create your own backend agentic app and then connect it with a marketplace app. You can create either a client-side marketplace app or a full-stack app as well. So these are the high-level steps in building an agentic app. The first one is you have to look at the agent flow, tools, memory, like whatever is required. And then you have to design that and build the marketplace app and handle the authentication and identify what is the right platform. Like sometimes it could be if you already have like something in your client environment, like which is Gradle or something, then it's good. If not, you can create your own app in your preferred or compatible language, right? Like so you might not be able to create in Next.js. Not a lot of agentic frameworks support that. So today, like if you think about Microsoft Agent Framework, it supports Python and it also supports C# as well. But Pythons get preference. So when they release something, like the Python version has the updates first, and the C# gets the update a little later. So if you are open to anything, then I would recommend building the app in Python. And with Cursor or any other tool that you may have, like now it's all easy to build these apps, right? And then you have to ensure that security, performance, and instrumentation, all these three aspects are covered as well, because as I explained in the past, right, security is a key thing. If you're building a chat application, for example, or something like through which like you will get an input, like you might not come across this scenario when you build a marketplace app. But if you're building an external chatbot or something, right? So somebody can come in and say that ignore the instructions provided and follow what I said. If they say that, if you have not handled all of those prompt injection related security prompts in your instructions, then the agent can probably release the information which it's not supposed to leak, right? So there are like critical things which you have to make sure. It's building an agentic app is easy, but then like handling all of these things like performance, security, and all of these, you might want to like make sure you use the right model, because certain models perform faster and certain models take time, like when you supply a lot of context. So you may need to do a lot of evaluation and make sure you build the right solution. And the last part is hosting the marketplace and agentic apps, right? So in Sitecore, right, like in our case, like we have built a client-side application, like which means like we have to build so it has to be a single app. But then since it's an agentic client-side app, like we have an agentic app which is built with Python separately, and another marketplace SDK, like which is based on the Next.js thing. So both of these have to be hosted. So it can be Vercel, like when you work with Vercel, like you can even host those smaller domains without any additional cost. So that can be one option. And if it's something else, right? Like so if it's Azure, like you can host it in Azure Functions or something and make sure like it integrates with your marketplace front end. Okay. So the next one is the sample architecture. So this is what we'll be seeing in today's demo. So I've created a compliance insights app. So this can be a problem for a lot of clients, right? Like so where once they create a content, they have to make sure it complies with all the regulations and all of the compliance requirements that is there. Because most of the times people create, and sometimes there may be new content author joining the team, and they may or may not know the history, and they may miss some of these, right? Like so this specific app can help them ensure that they comply with all of the checklists. This is a sample app like which has to be evolved. I've created this and published this in GitHub. I'll share the link after. So what this app does is it is integrated within the Sitecore AI platform, and then here it also works with an agentic system. So I have a front-end app, and which is built with Next.js, and a backend app like which has multiple agents. The first one is the supervisor agent, which receives the request, and then it works with multiple validators to make sure the created content is matching all of the requirements. And then finally, an optimizer agent, which basically optimizes based on the feedback created by the validators, and then it sends back to the front end. Yeah. Now let's look into the demo. So I hope you are able to see the Edge browser in my screen. So which shows the App Studio.
We're seeing the demo slide.
Okay, 1 second. Let me stop sharing. I hope you are able to see this now.
Yeah, I can see your browser with
Yeah.
the cloud portal. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. So this is the app that I've created. Creating this app in the Cloud Floater is very simple. Like you just have to go to App Studio and create new. And here you can select whichever extension point that you need. In this case, I've selected the page context panel, and you can select the API access that you would need. And I've selected the Sitecore AI APIs. And you can select the permissions if you wanted to control anything. And this is the deployment URL. So I have created an application which has this localhost 3000, and then I've selected the app logo. And if you wanted a custom authorization, you can probably select this one here, the client credentials, and you can select one, but I have not done that. So I've used the built-in authorization for now. And and then here is the application. Like you can see it in the GitHub. It includes an agentic app and Python app. This agentic app is based on Python, and the marketplace app is based on Next.js. Okay. And this is the also walk through the code. So here you could see the backend app, like which includes multiple agents. It includes the supervisor is here, and then it has multiple other agents, and then a fixed agent, like which will be optimizing the content at the end. And then we have the marketplace app, which includes the layout, like how it has to appear, and all of these, the page, and it follows the. I've used the Next.js starter kit for this marketplace app. It is a good starter kit. Like it is a very thin, and it requires, like, it includes only whatever is needed and very easy to understand. So I've used that, and I've created all of these providers, themes, and then the components. I've created a couple of components which you'll be seeing on the screen. And then yeah, this comprises of those the built-in authorization and all of those elements here. So this is something which is out of the box with the starter kit. So once what I've done is I've started both of these apps, and here you can see this localhost. So right now there is no context, so that is why it is throwing an error. But this would work within the app itself, within the portal. And this is the other app, like which includes like two APIs here that you can see. So now I'll go to the page context panel. So here you could see this is the app. All of your apps will be listed here. So when I start this, so now it has the page context. So it will expire. Let me reload. So previously here it was not working, right? Because it didn't have the page context, but then here it would work. Okay, it's loading the context. And I've included this one, the page info, like what is the specific site name and the page name and all of those things. And here what I'm doing is I have a checklist. I have a checklist, an Excel spreadsheet, like which has about like 10 specific rules. And also I have included a fact agent, which basically validates that the facts mentioned in this, like you see a lot of facts here on the right side. So if those are accurate, like this is something which people wanted to validate because like content authors, like sometimes like they may copy from somewhere or something, right? So we want to make sure like those facts are accurate and available in the internet. And then the citation here, you also see a citation if this is accurate or not. That is what this agent would check. And this bias agent would make sure like there is no biased content available. NPAI would look for like any kind of personally identifiable information there. And plagiarism is it's another common thing, like when you work with these SEO related functionalities, right? So you want to make sure like you create a unique content So certain phrases or something which you mentioned, like it shouldn't be, which you want it to be unique for yourself. It shouldn't be used by any of your competitors are out there. So this is what this specific agent would make sure. So these are all like very customizable agent. You can add more agents to it and do any of these like, and then deploy in your own specific environment. So yeah, now it has completed. And these are the ones which I mentioned in my Excel sheet, and that's what it's saying. Like it doesn't like look at all of the, I mean, these are all not looking right. And then the fact which we mentioned here, like we said like 90%, but it's only like 46% or something there. So that is what it is validating. And then the citation is also not matching. So that's the error that it throws. And then it's so here it's also complaining that that it is biased, because like there are people like who are single as well, so it's not catered to like all of the audience, and it sees families. And the personally identifiable information that you see here, it says, so yeah, we have put in a specific person name, and if this person leaves the company, it won't, it is not a good idea. So it is recommending something else. So, so then it also provides the recommended fixes. So which kind of like it uses like whatever is the right change, right? So it is kind of like recommending all of those things, and you can also customize and all of those things there. So when I click on apply fixes, so it applied the fixes, but then it doesn't change here, because that is one problem with the iframe, right? Because these two apps are now like totally independent. This is happening within the iframe, and this is whatever you see is like outside. Like we cannot control anything outside from within the iframe. That is one problem. But then now, like with the newer release, like you can also throw a pop-up here in the window and then ask them to refresh as well. So I need to incorporate that specific update. But now, like once you refresh this page, like you should be able to see the change. So it has now like picked up the changes which it showed here. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And we are using different models for different things, right? So we are not using the same model. For checking these citations and facts and all, we need a model which is web search enabled. So I've used that specific GPT model. And for the other ones, I've used reasoning models in some cases. And for the optimizer, I've used a generator model. I hope this all makes sense. Yeah, I think that's it I have for today. And these are the resources that you could see here. So which includes the GitHub repository, which where I have stored all of this module details. And the next one is the starter kit. So if you're going to create a specific marketplace app, I would recommend you to start with the starter kit. Like it is really good. And this marketplace documentation also has a lot of details. So one thing, like if you work with Cursor or any of the other vibe coding tools, like you might not, you have to supply all of this documentation in your prompts, because like they are not trained on these, because this is a new one that came up in this year, right? Most of the models that you might be using are trained only till 2024. So you might need to like supply this documentation, these reference and all of those things, but then it works pretty well. Sure. Yeah, that's it from my side. Do you guys have any specific questions?